Hello everyone and welcome to the next in our series of Daily Origami for YouTube. Today is my 731st video, and since this most recent year was actually a leap year, today is celebrating my 2-year anniversary of YouTube videos. So I thought for today we'd take a little break from everything else we're doing and maybe do a little special project to celebrate. And I'm also going to be doing a giveaway, which I'll be giving an explanation for in a separate video. But I just wanted to tell you guys all thank you so much for sticking with me. If you've been with me since the very beginning, then I say a million thank yous. And to all the new people who've been enjoying my videos, I thank you very much. And I look forward to even more years ahead of sharing with you guys lots of different and fun and unique kinds of origami projects. So I know I've had a few requests for a magical origami ball, the magic ball, and I thought I'd go ahead and tackle that as our 2-year anniversary challenge project. So this is a little tricky. It's really not, I hate to say it's not hard because that's misleading, I know, but the folds are not difficult. Putting it together can be tricky and frustrating, but you do want to try your best to, get your paper organized right and folded properly so that you can get everything to go together. So what we would need for this project is a piece of paper that's a rectangle in shape where its dimensions are 2:1. So the paper I'm using here right now is 34 centimeters by 17 centimeters. And this is a pretty good size. It's going to be a little easier to work with. If you use, a little smaller paper, like if you take a printer paper and make it into a rectangle, for example, it should be a little okay, but if you're kind of new to this, the bigger the paper, the better and the easier. Now, the key to this origami is folding everything, getting the pre-creases down right in the beginning. If you don't go through the trouble of getting the pre-creases, then the rest is very difficult. I think if you get the pre-creases and you have some patience, you can work through it. It does take a lot of time, and I think that's the big thing that kind of makes it discouraging. So I'll try my best to show you guys the steps and ways to make it a little easier as you go along. But we do want to try to get the pre-creases to start off with. So what we want to do is we're going to be separating the long ways, the paper, into 30 seconds. And then this way, going horizontally, we'll be separating it into 16ths. So that what you wind up with is a series of tiny little perfect squares when you're done. So, and then we'll cut everything in half diagonally every which way. So it'll be a lot of folds, but give you what you need to then put everything together. So what I'm going to start off with here is with my color side facing down. I'm just going to fold my paper in half, which I've already done because of the way I was cutting my paper. But you want to just get a really good crease here, folding it in half. Open it up. Take your right edge and fold into the center to fold in half here. And we're just going to do a series of folds here to separate everything. I'll do this side. I'll do the other side as well. Get a really good crease there. Then I'm going to take my right side here and fold into the crease I just made. And then I'm going to separate this section by taking that right edge over to the farthest crease here. And the more accurate you are with all this, then the easier everything's going to be. You really want to try to get really accurate folds when you do this pre-creasing. Turn it around, fold this side in. And then we're going to fold not to the farthest, but the second farthest crease to get this part here in the middle folded in half. So that right now our paper is folded and separated into 1/8. Now I'm going to go ahead and separate it even more by folding it into 16ths. So I'll fold this edge right into the first crease that you see there. Then I'm just going to take it over so that you can kind of follow where the center would be here. That takes you to this crease here. Line it up over there. Get everything straight and then make a crease on this side. Then I want to separate this section. So if I just kind of start it, you can find it should line up evenly with these creases on the other side. You'll know if you're doing it right if you're hitting the other crease. And then I'm just going to go one more. Flip it over here and do the other side as far as you can. So when you're finished, you should have your paper separated into 16ths. And we just have one more set of creases to make. We're going to then fold into the edge again here and just work your way across, getting all of these little strips of section that we've got here separated in half, so that what you're winding up with is a piece of paper that's separated into 30 seconds. So you just keep, I started that first one, then we just keep kind of folding along, folding to the next crease, lining it up so that you can get that next crease that you need. We'll just work our way across until we get through all of these, and you'll need to flip it over to do the other side too. So I've got as far as I could on that side. I'll flip it around and do this side then too. So when you're finished, you should have your paper separated into 30 seconds. Now, what I want to do really quick is, these are all right now valleys, and you can see the paper curls up a little bit. I want to just go ahead and start off here by making this an accordion fold. And so I'm just going to go through and reverse every other crease that I've made. I'm going to go through and do this once and just make the crease really clear. Now, the trick with this too sometimes is that if you go through all this folds, it can be a little disappointing because towards the end you might start to see little holes popping up here and there. And so, you know, I would recommend making good creases, but you don't want to be ridiculous with your creases, because that's just going to lead to there being a greater chance of there being holes in your project when you're finished. So try to find a good in-between of folding good clear creases, but not too strong, because you don't want them to be, you know, holes later. And it's probably good to kind of use a fairly strong paper. You don't want to use a super thin paper. I think printer paper works pretty good, especially if you get good creases started with it. But origami paper is really nice because it's a little easier to work with. Printer paper can be a little thick. But we get all this kind of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then I could just make a nice clear crease there. And then what I want to do is I actually want to reverse all that. Just to make it so that all these pieces go the same, you know, they get a chance to fold both directions. And that's because at some point all of these parts will be asked to go both ways. So it's good to kind of get the crease loosened up a little by making it go both ways to make it a little easier to work with down the road. So I'll just reverse this whole thing here. So when that's finished, then we're just going to smooth out this paper as flat as you can, because we're going to do another more creases in it, and the flatter the paper the better, because we want to make sure everything is pretty exact. So I've got my paper here now, and now what I want to do is separate the long ways into 16ths, so that essentially I wind up getting those perfect little squares like we talked about. So I'm going to flip my paper over and go ahead and fold everything in half. And you really want to try to make this as exact as possible. When you've done all those other creases, the paper tends to kind of curl up a little. Try to really stretch it back out to the main size that it was so that you get accurate creases when you do this. Put a good crease on it. Open it up. I'm going to fold into the center here. Turn around, do this side too. Then I'm just going to fold into the first set of creases I made here. And then fold up to that farthest crease. Turn everything around. Take this bottom part and fold to the first crease again. And you know you're folding straight because you've got all those other creases to line up, not just edges, so it gives you a lot of places to reconnect and make sure you're folding at the right spot. And then I want to fold not to that farthest crease, but the second farthest there at the top, to give me my last crease of these ones that are going as a valley crease on the white side here. So I've got my paper separated into eighths. You can tell we've got nice little rectangles here now. I'm going to flip it over just for a second because I want to keep those eighth sections all as nice mountain creases on my blue side. And then I'm just going to finish off with the other 16th crease here by folding on the blue side so that they're valleys on this side. So I'm just going to curl up to that edge. And just slowly work my way through so that I can get the creases I need here. So when you're finished, you should have these series of these cute little squares. You've got it all separated off properly. Now the last little bit, which is takes a little bit longer even, if you can believe it, is we're going to separate everything into some crisscrossing diagonals. So I'm just going to start here by taking my top right corner and folding it down, and you should be able to find kind of where the center crease was here. Line everything up and really use your creases as guides to help you to make sure you're really getting through the center of all of these little squares. So I've got one nice diagonal crease going there. If I turn it around so that I'm looking at that, I'm just going to keep folding towards that using these little squares as guides to help me make sure I'm getting in the right area. And you can see you should be able to line up your creased edges. You should be able to get everything kind of lined up as you go. And I'll do this next one and just keep kind of going in order here. I'll start off just by getting it to 1/16 and then, or I don't know how many it is here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is just separating this section into eighths. So, but then we're going to wind up wanting the whole section separated into 32nds so that you get a crisscross through every square. So you can see I've got this section here separated into fourths. And the one set of little diamond squares has a crease through it, but this one doesn't. So I want to make sure that it does. So you go ahead and fold up down here at the bottom in this little itty bitty triangle. And then fold up to the next set. And you should be able to line up into the corner of a little diamond every time you do this. And it'll give you the separation you need here. The more accurate you can make this, then the better everything's going to be. But you can see now I've got all of those lines separated then with the diagonal crease. And I just want to do that through all the way through my paper, and then I'll turn it around and do it the other way too. So once you've got this kind of started, if you want, you could just kind of go through each little section at the smallest level if you want to. Or you could go ahead and first put the, greater pieces, the greater crease, and then go from there. It's kind of up to you of how you want to do stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead so that I can see where some of my creases are, at least to help me as I go along. So I'll skip a diamond as I go. And then I could go ahead and go back and add the crease for the others here. And as you go, you should really always be able to put this tip of the paper into one of those little corners of those creases you've made to know that you're doing it right. Now, obviously, once you get to this point, you don't have that anymore as a guide. So it's good then to just kind of turn the paper around and then use this side edge as a guide as we go. And make sure that you get it lined up here with the next edge that you see. And as you go, you can try to make sure you get everything lined up straight. So that you can continue your series. And we're just going to go from each square and just keep adding one more set of creases here. And at some point, if you want, you can go ahead and try from this side too. So turn it around so that those areas you've creased are on the bottom left side. And then just take this part here and fold it down. And kind of just repeat what you've done on the other side as well here, so that you can get a new set of creases that will soon, meet up here in the middle too. So now that I'm starting again with this new corner, I have those little corner pockets of the creases to match up with to make things a little easier in the beginning, to make sure you're getting all those creases that you need. So I've kind of got all those lines done now, and then I just need to get this middle part where I can just follow along with the edge again on the side here to give myself my guidelines for the crease. And you just want to keep your way through until you can finish off all the diagonal creases that will separate through all these squares. So when you're finished with that first set of diagonal creases, it should look something like this. And then I just want to finish off the crisscross by doing the same thing, going the other way. So this time you fold from the bottom up, and that should give you the crease you need here to go through everything. And just, again, try to keep everything as exact as you can. You've got even more lines to use as a guide, so you can use them to help you make sure that you're getting everything. Again, you could start here from the bottom and work your way through using the little square points as guidelines to know where to put your crease, and then flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. So you can see I've got this first corner side here all finished off with those crisscross patterns. I'll just turn around and do the other side, and then fold over till I can get the inner part to all match up. So I've got both of the corners completed, and then all I need to do is just work through folding down, folding up this time now, lining up the edge with the creases that you see here so that you can finish this part off in the center. So when you're finished, you should have this nice, cool little kind of quilted feel to your paper with all these little zigzags and crisscross designs, leaving you with little perfect little squares everywhere. Now before we start actually putting everything together, there's a couple of different ways to assemble the magic ball. In the end, after doing all this creasing, you're going to kind of collapse everything into a cool little pattern that will make up the ball. And then the way that you secure it around to finish it into a three-dimensional object is you glue these two sides together, essentially. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can just put tape, which is pretty common. A lot of people like to use tape. You put a little bit of tape there and then fold everything over. I prefer to use a strip of paper that's the same as this, and what I like to do is put a little bit of the preliminary creases in that now, so that later when I try to collapse everything into the ball shape, it goes along a little easier. I sometimes find that tape is a little tricky and doesn't fold well. Perhaps if you have good, true cellophane tape, I think it'll fold a little better than, say, Scotch tape might. Scotch tape's a little stronger and thicker, more plasticky, and won't fold as well. I think one of the most frustrating things about making the magic ball is you do all this creasing, which like literally took me 30 minutes, and then also, you know, you collapse it and it's looking awesome and you're like, sweet, it looks so cool, and then you try to put the two sides together and that goes fine, but then getting it back down into the shape is really hard. So you want to probably play around and find which way works best for you. I know for everybody there's a different technique, a different way to do things. This way I still don't think is perfect. It's still frustrating, but it's a little easier than some of the other ways, at least for me personally. Just because I don't have cellophane tape here. We only have Scotch tape, so go figure, right? So I have some other paper here. What I want to do is essentially just cut a really thin strip, essentially just the same width as what one of these little squares is. I'm just going to cut a little bit of this paper off and, you know, glue it behind, both blue side here. But I just want to cut this off here and give myself a little bit of the kind of paper, you know, a little tab, if you will, for this. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold a little part. And this doesn't have to be exact in terms of sizing. You know, if you prefer it to be exactly the same width, that's fine. You can make it a little smaller. We just need a little bit to provide as an anchor for our project. Now, I want to wait to put it on until I've done all these pre-creases, otherwise the extra paper gets in the way. So if you can handle doing that and still making the creases without getting confused by this extra tab paper, then you could just make your paper a little longer than wide. But I think sometimes that can be confusing, so it's good to just go ahead and do it this way maybe. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here, and I'm just going to do it actually on this side. Make sure I don't get any on my paper below here. I'm just going to go right along that little strip of creases that I've already made. And then just stick my paper right here. And you want to make sure that, you know, it's exact as possible. So if there's a little excess paper here, I'm just going to cut that off. And you could kind of let it, you know, rest for a second if you need to. But then I want to go ahead and just make sure that the creases are included into this new section that I just made. So I can just go through and fold and make sure I get these side creases here with a good crease, the horizontal creases I should say. You just want to work your way through until you can get all those creases added here. And I just want to make sure too that I get this kind of going like the opposite creasing that I had on my paper originally. So I just kind of make sure that this accordion kind of goes through, so I'll just reverse the sections that I need to here. And like I said, I'm just doing it for the end here, so you don't need to really go through very far. I just want to make sure that my creases are going the right way here. So just reverse every other one there. And then there should be a crease right at the edge, probably, because that's going to be where the edge of our project is. So you can put a crease right in there. Just line it up right against that edge really good. And then if you want, you could go ahead and extend those diagonal creases too into that tab section by just going through and making sure that it goes to each of those sides. And slowly work your way through so that it's included in that extra paper that we just added. And then make sure you go the other way too. And I know for some people, if you're a little more advanced at origami, all these extra steps might seem a little extra and annoying. If you want to just try to challenge to just get straight through to what we're doing with the assembly of the ball, then that's, another way to do things, I think, for sure. This is just meant to be a little easier if you're kind of new to this, because I think these extra steps really help make stuff a little less frustrating later on. So I've got those extra pieces added there on my right side, excuse me. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to look at my paper, and if you look carefully, you can remember here, we've got these nice creases here that run through our paper. There are 8 sections that are total here that are mountain creases. We're going to use those as we work. So I'm just going to turn it sideways. And if I imagine that I've got this nice mountain crease here and I've got a nice little section of square up at the top with 2 rows on it, and I'm going to take this first crease that you see right here, the long crease, make sure it's a mountain. Get it going as a mountain and follow those diagonal creases there to make it kind of like a point, if you will. And then if I pull a little, you can see how this crease on the other side creates a little mountain as well, a little peak. And I want to do that so that this comes together and I could create a sort of kind of cup, if you will. It's a water bomb base essentially. Just going to squeeze all that together until pop everything around so that we can get this to come together and be flat. So you're just utilizing the creases that are here, making this a mountain, bringing everything together. You notice this other side has this nice little valley kind of section going here, and I could bring these two, the opposite sides, get another mountain going there too. If you bring those together, and then you allow this part here to come together, you can allow all of it to become flat. And that's essentially one little section of what we're doing here with our ball. And I just want to go along and follow the natural folds of everything as we go, alternating these creases and getting this nice peak here and this nice valley and this little cup that folds up into itself to create a water bomb base. So I can go along and I could look at the next one here. I need another valley. And then I could just imagine over on the side that I need another mountain. Just make sure you get this kind of going and get that part stuck in. And if you need to get a really good point in the middle, you could kind of pull things together. You should be able to gently create this alternating zigzag of the folds on the left, and then bringing them together, allowing each of these tiny little squares on the sides to cup off and create nice little water bomb bases on each side. And as you do this, you can bring it together, and you should be able to lay it pretty flat. Now there's always going to be a little bit of stress on the bottom part that we're still working through, but you can see how we're bringing this and collapsing it together like so. I'm just going to go through and do the whole row here. So always alternating between a valley and a mountain on this whole long strip of things. Get that kind of started. But still remembering that we want to keep this nice mountain crease going here. And I get another one of my little cups started here. And we're just going to keep going along. And if you've done all these pre-creases, you should see how easily everything collapses onto itself as you do this. You can't squeeze it tight, you can't hold it down until we've got everything done here. So it's good to just kind of let everything let loose in the background a little as you work. Just focus on the next section as you try to work through and create these alternating mountain and valleys, and then this nice little cup that will serve, that can collapse then together to make a water bomb base there. And just keep, like I said, just work your way through. Once we get these things, once we get everything kind of assigned a position and stuff lays flat, then you should be able to get everything going here. You want to keep that mountain crease going, of course. You just have to kind of follow where everything is so that you get right where that mountain crease is and that peak. Remember, that's where that water bomb base fold is going to be, where these sides collapse together. We can get sort of a nice series of these coming together like so. And they come together to fold up. So just keep working my way across here. Just remember where you have that mountain crease, again, that you need to have then the water bomb base coming together here. And then the valley, you should have a nice little peak down there that comes right in the middle. So get these next two going like so, but then I want to make sure to keep first this mountain up on the side. Get that making the little water bomb base that I need here. Once you kind of just get it going and you like kind of guide it along, it'll stay and keep its position so that as you work through, you get through the whole line of paper here. And if you're having trouble getting, the creases to go the right way, if you use like a little ruler, like a little toothpick, or if you have nails, it helps too, to kind of keep everything going so that it's nice and smooth. as I get to the end here, I'm going to get to that extra paper, and I want to remember I don't need to necessarily include it so much in the folds that I'm making. Get this last set going here. That one. And then this last little one here, you can kind of see how the last little bit on this one too. Now I've got the general flow of everything here. Now I could go ahead and go through and collapse it as I just pull everything together. Keep this outside part going. Again, make sure everything goes into those nice water bomb bases as you work your way through. And once you've kind of started the process and shown which way everything should go, everything should kind of pull into place as you pull it together. Just make sure everything is going the right way. And because we have all the creases, it really should just kind of pull together naturally on its own. Make sure if there's any parts that are funky that you get them kind of squared away right, of course. And it's not essential that this comes together perfectly As we work our way through, I'll just get all this kind of straightened away. And just handle your paper delicately because you don't want to put too much pressure on any of the joints to make it where there'll be a likelihood of there being holes. But you should be able to get everything to kind of come together at a nice solid spot. And give it a good pinch so that everything stays the way it's supposed to. But that's one row then of our ball completed. Now this is a lot like kind of like knitting or crocheting in the sense that you're just going to kind of alternate now between each row. So I've got one row of pleats completed there at the top, and I'm going to go through now and do the next set. Now if you remember, along our paper we had those nice mountain creases, and I could see them kind of hiding here. There's one right here, one right here, one right here. I want to keep those in mind because that's the next part that I'm going to be working with. Now this first crease was a mountain. I'm going to reverse this now. So the second crease is going to be a mountain. So I'm going to use that as my pinch point. And you'll see how I've already got the cup kind of starting here. And that should just come together really nice as I reverse everything and make a new spot here so that it's alternating underneath between, because we had two cups up here and now the next one's going to be underneath the peak. And I'm just going to work my way through and reverse all of the creases that I've made before on the zigzag on this long side and keep it going so that I could get these nice little alternating little cups where the water bomb base gets made. And as you go now, it should be a lot easier because the first step is established. You should be able to just go through and find those pieces kind of collapsing together really easily. Just start off with getting the crease reversed. Remember where this nice long mountain crease is. Find that point where it pinches together really good. Get it kind of started, and then just keep going. Find the next crease that's over here that you need to reverse. Remember where that wall is here that we're working with. Get that straight, and then just find that little pocket that we can make the crease for. And don't worry about what happens at the back. Just leave it the way it is. But we just want to kind of keep going in a line and getting this next row set with that alternating crease to give us the next part of our ball. And you can kind of even see some of these ones right next to it even starting to form without you even reversing that crease, because the natural flow of things is so clear there from the creases that we've made. And it kind of helps to keep, one hand underneath as you're working, and just kind of pop the paper out when you need to. If you need to create creases, you can use your fingers, get things going right so that they create that nice little hinge there. And that's really the essentials for making this ball as we work our way through. So I'm just going to keep going all the way to the edge here. So I've reversed all these creases and made these little bowls, the little water bomb based bowls there. And then I get one right here on the end too with that excess paper. Just try to get that kind of going as well. So once you've got that kind of started, then we could go back again here and just try to collapse the paper then, so that you could get so just make sure you get through, so that we could just collapse everything here following those creases we've made, and just gently get the base here to do a zigzag that we've been working on before. And then just as you do that, you can pull up the side of the creases we've already established, and everything should collapse really nice together on itself as we go. Getting familiar with the shapes that you see here and where things are and how the shapes fit together to create this pattern will be key to making it easier when we're at the very end and we're trying to finish everything off to make that last step. So try to get yourself familiar with all these shapes and how everything lines up and looks when you look at it as a pattern. And try your best to get these, end ones as good as you can. Sometimes it's a little tricky because there's not a whole lot of paper there to finish things off. Don't let it bother you too much because we're going to just be finishing it off later. So you should then have 2 rows of the ball completed now. And as you can see there, the little pocket, those little bowl areas with the water bomb base alternate in the positioning. So we're just going to go through now and do the same thing again. Again, remembering where that nice mountain crease was that goes horizontally through here. There's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. So I'm going to remember that as my point of reference here, that this needs to all stick up here along this wall. And now I'm going to go back to reversing again so that that first crease is a mountain. And I get my first little pocket there as I work my way through. And I'm just going to go ahead and reverse everything, making these creases alternate, creating that little point so that when I push in I could get a nice closed off little pocket there. And just keep going all the way through like we've been doing and till we get to the very end, and we can then finish everything off. So get all these reversed. So once you get all that completed, then again we're just going to collapse this, keeping those alternating edges along the side here as we go through, and collapsing everything as we go. You can kind of hold on to these edges as you pull things up a little. Keep a hold on stuff. Well, you can see we're kind of working our way through and getting this completed then with those alternating sides. So then I'll do the next set again. I'll find where that mountain crease is that runs straight through everything here. This nice crease right here, that's going to be my edge. And this time it's not the first crease but the second crease that's going to serve as my peak. So find where that is, and you'll find that natural little flow there. And just go through and reverse. Now the side paper that you're working with then on the left is going to get smaller and smaller as we go through, because we're going to keep working our way through and up. So it gets a little easier as you go. Just try to keep alternating. Once you can find that little pocket and give it a nice little kind of squeeze, little pinch on the sides to show where it is, just keep working your way through. And as you get each of these kinds of runs done, just make sure to go ahead and collapse everything once really good to get it all, make sure it's all lined up the way it's supposed to be. And get everything nice and flat. It's always good to give it one good little squeeze and pinch when you're finished so that everything comes together better later when you're making the ball. Give it a good squeeze there on everything. And then we'll just work our way through to the other remaining pieces. And you just keep alternating again, remembering that this is the side that we need to be working with. I just finished a series where the second part was my mountain, so I just want to alternate that. So I'll start with the first one this time as my mountain crease. Get that nice little start there with everything. Go through, reversing everything as you go. Get a chance to give a good squeeze on it as you go through. And then alternate again on the next one. We've just got a couple more to go here. So again, I find that nice mountain crease that's hiding in here. And the last time I used the first crease as my mountain crease, so this time I'm going to go ahead and reverse that and use the second one. So I can get that part to collapse good. And I'll just go through and reverse each of these as I go. And this might get a little trickier to work with because the stuff that we've finished is getting wider on the right side. So it's a little hard for my hand to reach underneath all the way. Just kind of work along carefully as you go. If you're using smaller paper, this might be a little easier for you. My paper's a little big, and so my finished ball's a little larger. You still just want to gently work along as you can. You don't want to put any unnecessary pressure on the paper if you can help it, since things start to get a little weak as we go because we've folded back and forth so many times. You start getting some of these points where they are going to get a little frayed possibly, but try not to let that distract you from working straight through. And collapse all that. Then on the last one here, I've been using that second part as my crease, so now I'm going to be using the first part as my crease. Get that started with that guy. And this is going to be a little trickier because there is a lot less paper to hold on to on the left side anymore. But we just want to do this last series. Make sure we get those parts a little pinched in. Good. The key is just to make sure that you reverse every time, and then just go ahead and collapse that if you can. Get good crease on that so we get something like this. So now what we want to do to finish everything off is I want to just focus on the edges. And what you want to do is try to create the kind of opposite of what you've got here. I've got this nice kind of V above, and I want to have one that's actually in between these two V's. So like right here, I want to create a little crease there. So if I just open this up and push down on it a little bit, and reverse it, to be able to get that peak that I want there. And you can make sure you've got one on the other side too, kind of. And there's a little extra tape on that one, so that was going to be a little tricky. But you just want to go through and make sure that you can create this extra peak here. That alternates between. Just go across. If you have to kind of pop it open a little when you're working, that's okay. Just try to get that part folded in. And the creases are there, so it should be fairly easy to do. We're just working our way through. Try to get those nice and smoothed out so that you could get a nice finished kind of edge to everything there. And then just flip it over, do the same thing on the other side too. We want to make sure we get those alternate sections folded off there and creased so we can get a nice peak going. Try to find that point where everything can be reversed as you go around. So that you get everything kind of finished off with some nice peaks on the ends, so that when it comes together, everything comes to the middle nice into the center. Now, we've got all these folds done, and everything is like looking really good, and then you're going to ruin some of it a little bit, which can be a little frustrating, I know. But what we want to do is we're going to take one of these edges, and I'm just going to unfold everything just a little bit so that I can get to that flat edge that I see here on the side. Flatten that out as much as you can, and that's the side that has my extra tab on it. And then the other side I'm just going to fold out a little bit so that I could get a little of that flat edge too. Then I'm just going to go ahead and put the glue on this edge that I had that was my extra edge here. My dog's barking, excuse him. Put some glue there on that edge and then wrap this around and line everything up as good as you can. And we just want to keep everything nice and straight and flat, and give the glue a second to dry and set if we can. So you can get some good glue running on all that there. And get those two sides connected good. Now I still have all this side still nice and collapsed, and we want to just slowly work our way through and try to get the part that was glued even to collapse too. And this can be the part that could be a little tricky, because you just need to kind of follow the natural flow of things. Don't worry so much about how the ends look. We'll clean those up later. But we just want to try to allow for that crease that we want here. Like I could find where my seam is where I put the glue, and I can just see here this particular, for example, this particular one here, I need to create a nice water bomb base here if I can. So I want to try to pinch my paper off. And it could be a little tricky because this is the part that's not as strong anymore because there's 2 layers of glue. So you try to give a little pinch on one side in each and give that little push that you need right along that seam so that we can get that part where the glue was and the tab to come together. And I could just kind of work my way across here and skip one, do the next one here. Find the center seam, let this serve as the pinching point for this next box. Try to get that together, come together and pinch. So get that started. Don't worry about how everything else looks there. Skip the next box and do the next one over here. So keeping that center seam here on both sides, I can kind of collapse this next box if I can. Pinch on both sides. Get that to go down. Get the crease going there. And then try to do the last one too, skip it over a little and try to imagine a little bit there going to help it pinch off. And then we just have the alternate sides, just one side above that we also need to focus on. So I still have my seam here, and I did every other place to pocket in one. So I'm just going to go one up above that a little and find the seam here to try to make sure that I give a chance to collapse the little that I have there. So kind of pinch on both of these sides until you can bring them together. And then just skip over one area there and then do the next section. We only need to redo this for this one area, the 3 rows in total. the row right above the crease, the row right below it, and then the creased row too. And then make sure we get the opposite side here too. And you could just kind of try to fold and bring together this center part where we added that tape. That's the part we just want to focus on right now, because we really want to make sure that we can get that part to collapse good, because that's going to be the secret to making the ball look good when we're done here. So you just pull gently on the sides, these little edges that stick up. Try to get it all kind of squished down as much as you can and bring it together so that we can create these nice creased edges here. And I've got this part sticking up funky on the side. Don't worry about that right now. We just want to focus on trying to get it all collapsed so that we can put a little pressure right in that middle area there where we had the extra taped or glued section, depending on how you did things. And you can kind of pinch the edges as much as you can. And then I just want to adjust, the outside part to make sure it's all right. So you can kind of go through and make sure that all those creases that we did still there. Looks like some of them popped out a little funky, so I'll get those back in as much as I can. Get everything folded back down as much as you can, remembering the shapes and the way things felt down for all the sides. Get this part folded in again. Those parts pop out fairly easily, so don't worry if those are all need to be kind of refolded a little. You should be able to get something that looks like this at the top. And then down here at the bottom, and make sure these guys all get back reversed the way they were here. I have that part where the crease was with the extra paper, so I want to make sure I get that, even though it's a little thicker, make sure it's nice and pinched off good. You probably will always be able to tell where that part was where we added the extra paper. But if you look for it really hard, you can kind of tell where it is here, because it's sort of not as clean and as tight as some of the other sides are. But this is what you should wind up getting, something that looks like this kind of like cool little like Twinkie-sized kind of thing here, if you will. And if you've got everything really creased really good, and you feel good about how everything looks with that, then what you could do is put a little pressure on both ends here and poof it out until you get a ball. And if you get it all the way this way, you could kind of create like a little plate or a donut, if you will. And you can kind of check to make sure all your creases are okay as you do this. But if you've made it right, you leave it sitting, you should be able to get a nice kind of little ball shape and allow those ends to come together on either side to create a good base. So you should be able to easily collapse it into a nice flat part and then poof it out and lay it flat and let it kind of go to its own shape, which should be pretty close to a nice little ball shape. Thicker paper works better, gives you a better ball little design, but that should give you your completed magic ball. And like I said, assembly is the trickiest part. I think really the end part is really the hardest. And then the time it just takes to do the pre-creasing. But that should give you your completed little magic ball, which is our finished project for today. Thank you again so much for watching for the last 2 years, and we'll see you next time.